Good morning, everyone, and it's great to see everybody here. And I'm having a wee bit of a flashback because I haven't done Zoom in a while, and of course, we're all very used to Zoom over the last couple of years with COVID. And it's great that we're able to get out, but it's also great that we've been able to use this new medium, Zoom, and it's great to be able to use it, and it's great to be able to connect with you guys through this way. So, thank you all for joining us this morning, and I hope what we're going to talk about is going to be of benefit to you and help you grow your business. The title of today's seminar is Growing Your Business During Uncertain Times. And I think what I want to say, first of all, is that sometimes there's a perception in business that in order to start your company, in order to grow your company, in order to do well in your company, the environment around you needs to be really good. You know, interest rates need to be low. The economy needs to be growing. There needs to be relative calm in the world around us. Everything needs to be in order. And in that environment, a business can survive and thrive and do really, really well. But if the environment is chaotic and calamitous and difficult, and interest rates are rising and cost of living is rising, then there's really no chance of a business doing well. That can at least be the perception of the general public, and it can be the perception and thoughts that go in our head as business owners. The way the world is now means all I can do is survive. All I can do is batten the hatches down. Whatever happens will happen, but it doesn't look good. The reality is that businesses have been able to grow throughout the centuries, throughout history, in very chaotic and calamitous times. In times like this, cost of living crisis, energy crisis, war in Ukraine, in a post-COVID world, sometimes when a new crisis comes, it almost feels it's the first crisis we've ever faced, or at least it's the first serious or seismic crisis that we've ever faced. But it's not. We have faced chaos and calamity forever. We've always gone through uncertain and difficult times. You think about the 2007, 2008 credit crunch that led to the global recession. You think about the dot-com era. You think about the dot-com bust in 2000. You think about the early recession in the early 1990s. You think about a massive recession that happened in the early 1980s when we lost about a third of our manufacturing base. Think about the 1970s when there was the oil crisis and the 3-day working week, and there was strikes aplenty with literally bodies not being buried because the gravediggers were on strike. You think about the World War II, World War One, the Great Depression, and even more recently, you think about the pre-Brexit era, the Brexit era, the post-Brexit era. You think about COVID. You think about all of these different chaotic and calamitous events that go on in the world and have always gone on in the world. And I'm not trying to downplay what's happening now. I'm just simply saying that what's happening now is the way it's always been. It's the way it's always. It doesn't feel like that. It feels new. It feels like we're onto something different here, something worse. But it's not. We've always gone through difficult and calamitous times. And businesses have been able not only to set up, but to start and to grow during those difficult times. And not only to start and grow, but also to establish themselves as really successful global companies, local companies, national companies, successful companies that have given the owners what they want to achieve their goals. And I want to share really my personal experience of growing businesses during difficult times. Let's see if I can move where's my PowerPoint? There we go. Just a wee bit of background to myself. My company is a company called Shred Bank. We do confidential shredding, and we started our business in 2007. So we're a mobile shredding company. We go around the country shredding confidential information at the client's premises, and we do that through the use of mobile shredding companies. And that's one of our wee trucks there. And I set the business up in 2007 with my business partner, James. And we can't be interactive because you guys are all silent. But if you recall, way back in September 2007, the Northern Rock Bank came under public ownership. And it was the beginning of the global credit crunch. We'd hit that peak boom in the property market, and the whole thing just collapsed. And we set up our business on October 2007. And how did we respond to that? How did we react to that? We just grew our business. We had a relevant business model. We decided to go out there proactively and positively, and we knocked on doors, literally 100 companies in one day, 98 rejections, 2 people became clients. We spoke to local papers about ID fraud, data protection, environmental responsibility, business security. We got lots of articles in the paper. We went for awards, even though we didn't really deserve any award because we'd only started. We did everything that we could to be visible, to be out there, to knock on doors, and to make people aware that on-site shredding, mobile shredding was the most secure way to go. And we built our business, and within 3 years, we became larger than the 2 major established players in the market. And that was during the global credit crunch. We're nothing special. We made plenty of mistakes, but we just focused on growing the business. We just focused on a relevant business model that people needed, and we built the company up. So that sort of proves that businesses can succeed even in very, very challenging circumstances. And my own, that's my personal experience of it. But I have another personal experience that goes even further back than that. And we're going to have to go back 22 years for me to share with you another experience of someone who grew their business during very calamitous times. So I'm going to take you back to my first experience of a business growing during difficult times. This picture is a picture, as you can see, of the Europa Hotel. And back 22 years ago, in January the 20th, 1990, I was celebrating my 13th birthday at the very, very top of that picture, the penthouse suite of the Europa Hotel. And you're probably thinking, why at 13 years old were you spending your birthday at the penthouse suite of the Europa Hotel? Well, the reason is my father was the shareholder and director of a company called the Emerald Group. And the Emerald Group was like the Hastings Group of today. And they owned hotels in this neck of the woods and in GB and in North America. One of the main cash earners was the Europa Hotel that we owned at that time. And that's why I got to spend my 13th birthday in the Europa Hotel. About 6 months after that wonderful experience, my father was in North America in doing some business for a couple of weeks. And he rang the house, spoke to my mum. My mum came upstairs and said to me, Philip, really, really bad news. Your father's really, really ill. I've been brought into a Salvation Army hospital, and he has been diagnosed with leukemia. And I didn't know at the time, but he had been basically given a few weeks to live. To cut a long story short, he managed to get back to Northern Ireland. And around that time, we also had a lot of other things going on in the world. We were in the middle of, or we began to go into what was a very deep and difficult recession of the early 1990s. It really felt like a recession. You know, people were unemployed. Your neighbor lost his job. The person you went to church with, one of their families had their father had lost a job or whatever and been made redundant. It really felt like a recession. Things were tough. And we were also in the middle of the Troubles. And interest rates at that time, and you think they're bad now, back then they were around 7 or 8%, and overnight they doubled to something like 15%. And my father's business had a 19 million of borrowing. And so when you think about the recession, when you think about interest rates doubling, when you think about being in the Troubles, and with leukemia, and added to that, the Europa Hotel, which it was famous for, or infamous for, it blew up. So the main cash pie of the business collapsed, literally collapsed. And so when you think about all that's going on there, you know, you've got my father diagnosed with leukemia, you've got the Europa Hotel blowing up, you're in the middle of the recession, you're in the middle of the Troubles, interest rates have just doubled, the Emerald Group collapses. And my father comes back to Belfast to receive treatment in Ward 22 in the Royal Victoria Hospital. And within 2 or 3 months, he comes into remission and he's better, he's healed, but he's lost his business, he's lost essentially everything. And what he decides to do is, even in the midst of all that chaos and calamity, is think to himself, you know, I need to get a business up and running. I need to get things started again. And he made a phone call to a global restaurant company. And the global restaurant company was a company, I'll just put on, Pizza Hut. In 1991, he rang, or 1990, end of 1990, he rang Pizza Hut UK and said to them, I want to get a bunch of investors and shareholders together and bring the Pizza Hut franchise to Northern Ireland, to south of Ireland, to the whole of the island. And he did it. I don't know how he did it. He had no hair. He had just been completed his chemotherapy. I don't know how he convinced them to do it, but the guys from PepsiCo and Whitbread, who owned Pizza Hut at that time, he brought them over to Belfast. He showed them around Belfast at that time. There was no waterfront hall. There was no McDonald's franchises. There was no restaurants. There was maybe Scandia in Belfast and Villa Italia or something like that, but there was no cinema complexes. He was showing what was going to happen in the likes of the what would become the various cinemas in Dublin Road, Belfast, and Yorkgate, and all the rest of it. He was just showing them the vision, and in the middle of the troubles and the recession and the fact he had no hair because of chemotherapy. But he convinced them, and he convinced shareholders and directors to back him in setting up Pizza Hut. And in 1991, we opened up the first Pizza Hut in Northern Ireland in Carryduff. And within 2 years, 4 Pizza Huts were up and running before he passed away in 1993, and also one in the south. And the reason why I tell you that story is because success is possible even in the most challenging of circumstances. It doesn't really get much more challenging than that in my eyes anyway. And yet he saw a relevant business model. He saw there was an opportunity to get into the family dining, that idea of kind of escapism and family. And even in recession, people still wanted bread, cheese, and tomatoes. and he was able to build up the business before he passed away in 1993. And all of those brands that you see there, Walt Disney, LinkedIn, IBM, Microsoft, and I know Shredbank is in there amongst those good global brands, but it's my presentation, so I'm sticking it in. And all those brands, you all will be familiar with them. But the interesting thing about them is that they were all started during the recession. Walt Disney was started during the Depression of the 1930s, and it's now a global brand. LinkedIn in the dot-com era, 2000s, and now LinkedIn, successful company. Microsoft has had its troubles, but Microsoft started in the 1970s during that oil crisis, during those energy shocks, during those deep, deep recessions and difficult days of the 1970s. Microsoft started at that time. Pizza Hut started in the early 90s in this neck of the woods, and in the 50s during the recession. All of these brands started at a time of recession. And they were not only able to establish their businesses and start them up, but become global successful brands that survived not just one recession, many recessions, many conflicts, many periods of calamity, many changes of political instability. They were able to establish and grow and become successful businesses because they were relevant, because they were relevant to the market, they were relevant to you, they were relevant to the consumer. Because they were relevant for the moment, and indeed throughout the ages, throughout the years, they were able to survive and thrive. So success is possible. There's the beginning point. Success is possible even in the most challenging of circumstances. And that was the evidence that I've given you, just so that I'm not just saying, hey, reach for the stars, it'll all be fine. Those are real examples of real people and real businesses that were able to survive in very, very difficult times. So how do we start to grow again? It's a kind of a cheeky little promo of one of my books. I wrote a book called Start to Grow, and it's available on Amazon if you're interested in it. And if you're really, really interested and want to take it further than that, there's also a book called Start to Lead, around leadership. And then the third book, Start to Grow Again, which is about starting your business or reigniting your business during difficult times. So the first thing I would suggest you do right now, as a response to the crisis that we're in and the calamity that we're in, is to reflect and rest in the fundamental truths. Now, what do I mean about that? A little bit of reflection, a little bit of kind of resting in some key fundamental truths that will not change, okay? One, if you are relevant, you will survive and grow. Now, I've made relevant word quite a bit. If you're irrelevant, that's quite a harsh word, and I get that. But if you're irrelevant, in other words, nobody wants you, nobody needs your business, nobody needs your products or services, clearly you will not survive and grow. So it doesn't matter how good the economy is. If you have an irrelevant business model, then it's just not going to work. But if you have a relevant business model that's relevant to consumers, that's relevant to certain businesses, that's relevant to a certain market, then no matter what's going on in the world around you, you will survive and grow. So relevancy, that'll never change. So if your business model today you believe is still relevant, then you will survive and grow. Second, there are many levers available for you to pull. I don't care what size your company is, whether you turn over £5,000 a year, whether you turn over £5 million a year. You've actually a lot of levers right now to pull. You think of yourself in a control room and you've got all of these levers. Sometimes, during times of chaos and calamity, when all those politicians and business people and significant players in the world are making all of these decisions, we feel a little bit powerless. We feel a little bit reactive. We feel a little bit, there's nothing really we can do but just kind of sit it out or respond to whatever comes our way. Well, that's not the case. You have a lot of levers that you can pull. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example, over the next couple of days, 100 companies who don't know of your existence could know of your existence. 100. Now, that could be and the lever that you pull is I'm going to walk into 100 companies. I'm going to literally walk down a street and walk into my market, or I'm going to literally email 100 companies that's on my email list or whatever, or I'm going to link in with 100 companies or whatever. You can, or mail shot 100 companies. Here's a very simple one. Now, some of your market may be consumers and it may not lend itself to this, but as an example, you could put 100 mail shots together and stick a chocolate bar in each envelope. You might think, why would I do that? Well, if somebody sends me a mail shot and there's a chocolate bar in it, well, I'm not going to throw it in the bin. First of all, it's going to have weight on it. So I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to open it up and I'm going to see a chocolate bar on it. This actually happened, by the way. And somebody gave me a Whisper bar. That happened several years ago, and that's a very, very cheap marketing initiative. But I liked the fact that there was a Whisper bar. I ate the Whisper bar, and I found out about the company. I didn't buy anything from it. That's not the point. The point is, I remembered that mail shot. I remembered that company. I remembered what that offered. And so today, you can pull a marketing lever that nobody can stop you. You can do it. You can do it right now. You can send out 100 mail shots with a chocolate bar in it, and 100 companies will now know in the next 48 hours who you are, what you do, and you may get some business from that initiative. You'll certainly get talkability, which is what it's all about. Other levers that you have available, maybe, for example, there's a little cash flow strain, a lever that's available. Speak to your bank, extending your overdraft facility. Other levers that are available to you, you may in maybe some tech or some efficiencies in the business. Other levers that are available to you, you can increase your prices today by 5%, a relatively small increase. And you might think, well, £1 to £1.5p, it's not even worth it, Philip, or £10 to whatever. It's just not, raise your prices by 5% and reduce your overheads by 5%. And you will see the impact on your cash flow. You will see the impact on your profitability. Small, wee, minor change, but you have the control. You've got the power to do it. Now, there'll be some overheads you can't reduce by 5%. There'll be some overheads you maybe reduce more by 5%. But just look at everything that you pay for and negotiate through the whole lot of it to reduce it by 5%. At least go with that intent to do that. And then increase your price by 5% as a recommendation. It may, again, you might want to do more than that. You may want to do it less than that. You may have already done it. But raising by 5, reducing by 5, that's a lever you can pull to introduce profitability straight away into the business. And nobody can stop you from doing that. That's your lever that you can do today. So the lever of marketing, 100 chocolate bars, a lever of putting some new tech and new efficiencies into the business, a lever of, for example, increasing prices by 5%, reducing overheads by 5%. Just little changes that you can control that make maximum impact in bringing your business forward. Sometimes during calamitous times, you think everything's moving very slowly, that everything's kind of grinding to a halt, but it's not. Things, as we all know, are moving very, very fast. And there are many, many opportunities. The market's changing. Competitors are changing. The consumer needs and wants are changing. Tech is changing. There's ways to do things more efficiently. There's opportunities that are out there. There are competitors that perhaps are exiting the market. There are consumers that are coming into the market. There are opportunities. And even in calamitous times, there's an opportunity to work your business model to make sure that it's relevant to the market and to the consumers that are around today. And fourthly, the business model can change. Sometimes we get very emotional about our business model, very wedded to our business model. And sometimes we have to recognize that the market has shifted. COVID, perhaps, recession, perhaps, cost of living has kind of shifted the market, not maybe in a seismic way, but maybe to an extent that you've got to maybe adjust things on the business model. So maybe pull the business model down off the shelf, dust it down, and see if there needs to be some alterations and changes. Just be kind of unemotive about it, and just say, look, what do I need to change? Am I still, that word again, relevant? So here's the reflections. If I'm relevant, I'm going to grow. So I've nothing to worry about. If my business model is relevant, I can survive and grow. There are many levers for me to pull. I'm not powerless. I have lots of things that I can do that can move the needle forward. Things are moving fast. They're not slow. And there's opportunities that are coming all over the place for me to be more efficient, for me to be more profitable, for me to actually introduce more products or services or whatever. The business model might need to change. So am I relevant? So how do we know if we're relevant? And again, some may struggle with that word, but you know yourself, if a restaurant is no longer relevant to you, you won't go. If a website is no longer relevant to you, you won't go. If a shop is no longer relevant to you, you won't go. I often use the example of, if you can remember, I mean, I'm being facetious, undoubtedly you will remember it, Woolworths. Woolworths was a well-established high street brand going back many years. We all went to Woolworths. Our mothers took us to Woolworths. We all remember Woolworths and clothes and sweets and all the rest of it. But Woolworths closed. And you might say, no, Philip, but Woolworths closed because the owners, they sold the assets and they ran out of cash. Woolworths closed because Woolworths was no longer relevant. That's the bottom line. We might have been a little bit emotive when it closed, but we weren't that annoyed because we weren't going anymore and others weren't going anymore. Tesco's had taken that space, or online had taken that space. I mean, in fact, the only thing you can remember about Woolworths in my mind anyway is Pick a Mix. And funny enough, Pick a Mix was the one thing that actually survived. It was Pick a Mix went online, but Woolworths went under, sadly, because it just wasn't. See, if it was relevant, somebody would have bought it, and bought it for £1, and then would have relaunched it again. It just wasn't relevant anymore, and that's why it went under. But businesses that are relevant, they will survive. So how do we know if we're relevant? One, ask yourself these 4 questions. What problem does my business solve? What problem does my business solve? In other words, you might have a really nice product, you might have a nice service, you might have been established for a long time, but the question you need to ask yourself is, what problem does my business actually solve? And if you can say, well, this is how, for shredding, for example, we solve the need for environmental compliance, legislative compliance, data protection compliance. That's the problem. I want to make sure that my information is safe. We solve that problem by shredding it on site. The second thing is, does the problem exist in numbers to be viable? If there's only one company wanting shredding in this neck of the woods, then we wouldn't be a viable business model. So ask yourself the question, do I still solve a problem in the market today? And there's still a lot of people suffering that problem. And thirdly, you have to ask yourself the question, do people want a solution? I would love a solution when I drive into Belfast, all that heavy traffic, in the morning. My solution would be helicopter, right? But I ain't going to pay for a helicopter, and I'm not going to do that. So I might in a sense have that problem of traffic, and there's a lot of people have the problem of traffic, but we don't really want the solution of a helicopter. So no sale from that point of view. So you've got to ask yourself the question, do people want a solution to the problem that they're suffering? And then the fourth thing is, can the solution be provided at a price less than the cost of enduring it? And what do I mean by that? Say, for example, years ago. I live in the country here, so I didn't have fast broadband access. BT's lines didn't go to my property, and so that was a problem. And there's a number of people suffering that problem. And yes, we want a solution, so that's all pretty good. But at the time, the price of that was about £100 a month, something like that. And you might think I'm a bit of a cheapskate, but I thought, no. Yes, I have the problem. Yes, there are many people suffering that problem, and yes, I do want a solution. But I feel that the price per month is higher than the cost of enduring the problem. So I'm going to endure the problem and no sale from me. But when the price came down to about 50 quid a month, to me, the price was less than the cost of enduring the problem. So if people are suffering a problem that's costing them £1,000 a year, if you can provide that solution to that problem for £800 a year, then you're relevant. So it's about looking at your business model and saying, do I solve a problem? Are there still people suffering that problem? Do they want a solution? And can I hit it at a price point that is less than the cost of them enduring that problem right now? Does your product pass the so what test? Ask yourself, what pain do I cure? How am I better than the competition? Why would people buy from me, and will the end result be beneficial? I'll give an example, like during the recession, during the last recession, people couldn't go out for dinner because it was far too expensive, and it's even more expensive now. And you take a little young couple in their 20s and they go out in the Friday night to Dean's in Belfast or whatever, or a lovely restaurant like that, and they can't do it anymore because he's maybe been made redundant and she hasn't had a wage increase in the last 2 years. So that's a problem, and they do want a solution. So who comes along at that time to provide a solution to that problem that many, many people were suffering? Well, dine in for a tenner. I think it's dine in for 12 quid now. I think the price is going up because of inflation, but Marks and Spencer's did a dine in for a tenner. And that provided a solution to a problem that existed in the market. They couldn't go out. They couldn't have that lovely experience of a lovely meal on a Friday night. So Marks and Spencer's came up with a clever marketing idea to solve a problem in the marketplace to people who were willing to pay for that solution at a cost less than at a price less than the cost of enduring the problem. And a tenner hit the mark, and it became a very, very successful marketing initiative. So ask yourself that question: what pain does my customer have? How is it better than the competition? Why would anyone buy from me? And will the end result be beneficial? Okay, so we're going on to the 5 R's of recovery. How do we recover? How do we build our business during these difficult times? How do we recover post-COVID even? And how do we grow during these difficult times? First of all, recognize, I think sometimes as business owners, we can put our heads in the sand a little bit, and we don't really want to sort of deal with a lot of things that are going on in our business. I think there has to be a kind of an honest recognition of what's going on in our business and in our market. So is my business model still relevant? So it's recognition of where the business model is at. Is it relevant? Is it maybe more relevant? Does it need to be adjusted and changed? Recognize where we are at, what we want out of the business, recognize where the market's at, recognize what the consumer's needs and wants are. Just a real honest, brutal assessment. And that could be just go up for a walk up a mountain and really reflect on your business and where you're at. Maybe bring a mentor in, a friend or a family member, or chat to the folks in Down Business Centre. Just a real honest assessment of where you are at as a business before you take the whole thing forward. The second thing is risk minimize. I would suggest you do. And risk minimize, I mean, I think there's sometimes a myth within entrepreneurs that we're all about risk taking. We're all swashbuckling sort of risk takers who put it all on red every day and, just always shoot for the stars. Reality is entrepreneurs are not really risk takers. We're actually risk minimizers, believe it or believe it not. Richard Branson is probably one of the examples that we can best think about as a risk taker. If you read about Richard Branson, you look into Richard Branson, he's actually not. You find that when he launches a new business, he tends to get external funding from another company. He tends to do it as a joint venture, so he risk minimizes. He tends to put a lot of value, a contribution in terms of the brand and in terms of him and in terms of marketing. But there's other investors that take that financial risk. And he's just very, very sensible. He's risk minimizing. Apparently, when he bought the first plane for Virgin Atlantic, he did a risk minimizing strategy, which was that if the business didn't take off and didn't work, that the company that he bought the plane from would buy it back at the price that he paid for it 12 months later. That's risk minimizing. And so we need to risk minimize too. So what are the things that we could think about? Well, to me, risk minimizing is one of the things I would really encourage you to think about is have a conversation with your accountant. Because a lot of companies, a lot of businesses, they speak to their accountant about 2 or 3 months, 4 months after their year end. And the accountant brings you in, gets you to sign a few things and tells you how much tax you have to pay. That's it. There's your self-assessment, there's your P&L, there's your documents to go to Companies House or whatever, or Inland Revenue. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. No good. What you need is quarterly management accounts. No matter how big you are, how small you are, whatever size you are, you need to know the profitability of your company regularly. And so speak to your accountant and say, I want to risk minimize and I want to have a conversation with you every 3 months for 20 minutes. And I want you to tell me, accountant, how well the business is doing. I want to see a quarterly management accounts of my sales, my turnover, my profitability. I want to know where my cash flow's at. I want to know if I have any risks. I want to know how best to make decisions from a tax efficient point of view. I don't want to make those choices and decisions and hear information I don't want to hear or do want to hear 3 or 4 months after the year's finished. I want to know what's happening during the year. I want to know what's going on. And it's a typical historical thing that, you know, your accountant is, you go up a wee rickety stairs and, you know, Mrs. Miggins is sitting there as the secretary and the accountant's sitting there with a big ledger, and that's no good. Forget all of that. Go and get yourself a tech accountant, as I call them, people who run very niche little 2-3 man accountancy practices where they are they're online, they use apps, they have real-time information about how well your company's doing and what the finances are. You're looking for somebody who's really on it. You want to be able to ring your accountant and he or she answers. That's really important. None of this, he gets back to you or she gets back to you in 2 or 3 weeks' time. You want to get hold of somebody that they can answer and put them to the test. Can you tell me right now how well my business is doing? Or at least, can you give me the most recent update on how well my business is doing? That's what we need. Because during these chaotic and calamitous times, you want to put your head on the pillow and know, I'm making profit, I'm making money, I'm making the right decisions. So risk minimizing is about getting quarterly management accounts, at least, or monthly management accounts at best, and having an accountant that's really on the numbers. Risk minimizing may be investing in technology or more efficient operations so that you can produce your stuff at a lower cost so that competitors don't come into the market and undercut you. Risk minimizing, again, it might be, again, putting up those prices and reducing those costs in order to bring more profitability. Risk minimizing may be also building up cash reserves and really, really focusing on building up a little reserve account to give yourself some room to maneuver if things start to change or things get a little bit more hairier in months to come. So think risk minimization, think honest assessment of where the business is at. Remove. What do I mean by remove? Remove, what I mean by that is get rid of anything that's a barrier to growth. That might be a process that's inefficient, a product that's unprofitable, or an individual in your organization that is no longer able to help you bring your organization forward. And in fact, there's a barrier to that. So what needs to be removed? What needs to be risk minimized? What needs to be restored? We think about, for example, the importance of having restoring or maybe old marketing initiatives, maybe something that you've done in the past that worked really, really well and you haven't done it. COVID kind of flinged you off in a different direction and you haven't done that mail shot in a long time, or you haven't knocked on doors in a while, or you haven't picked up the phone, or you haven't ran a social media campaign. Restore some of those old marketing initiatives that were very, very effective. We're getting back, Shredbank are getting back to going to awards again. We haven't been to awards in 5 years. Just getting back into the scene, getting back into networking events, getting back into the things that we used to do is really, really important. And then refocus on your goals, refocus on growing your business. So recognize, where am I at, minimize risk, speak to your accountant, get those quarterly management accounts, remove, be brutal, be ruthless, what needs to be taken out in order to move forward, restore some of those old things you used to do that were actually really, really effective, and then refocus on growth. Now, we're being a little bit pushed for time. So this, if you can look at it, opportunities, proposals, and clients, I would stick that on your whiteboard. Get a whiteboard if you don't have one, stick it on your wall, and put a list of what the real opportunities that are out there. People that you've spoken to, people that have inquired, people that you're down somewhere down the road with in terms of potential clients. Put all of them down. Then another column of what your proposals are, prices that you've sent out, quotes that you've given, and then live clients. Now, this may not be relevant for everybody, but I would put that on the board. Sales management systems and all the rest of it have your head completely fried. To me, whiteboard, 3 columns: opportunities, proposals, clients. And you will quickly see how well you're doing at any time of the day. You can look at that board and you can see maybe the board is absolutely flooded with opportunities, but not that many proposals. That means you're not good at converting from opportunities to proposals. Maybe you'll need some sales trainer support. Proposals to clients might, for example, be difficult. So you might have a lot of proposals, but very little clients. So therefore, you might need to, again, get a little bit of training or mentoring on how to convert. Something to think about. Very quickly, think different. This is something I talk about in all my presentations. Steve Jobs was certainly a man who thought different, and every one of your products or services can be put on this graph. And I'm going to go very, very briefly, very quickly. The x-axis there is the amount of value that you give to the customer, and the y-axis is how unique and innovative your product is. So, for example, if you sold, like my business partner does, home heating oil, then it obviously adds a lot of value to the customer. But it's not that innovative and unique. You know, company A sells oil, company B sells oil, company C sells oil. It's not that innovative. It's oil. It's good. It's important. We need it, but it's not different. So the marketing, the competitive edge that you've got will always be about price. So if you're undercutting your competitors, reducing your margins, then the likelihood is you've got a great product, you've got a great service, but it's not that different, or certainly it's not perceived as that different from your competitors. If you are highly innovative, but don't offer that much value, you're going to be very lonely, because yeah, you've got a clever wee product there, but nobody wants it because they don't see any value in it. If you, for example, are low level of value and low level of innovation, very, very crowded market, and you want to get well out of there because you've no money to be made there. Where you want to get is high into the right, where you've got a high value product or service, and it's very different than the competition. And there you'll find success. And that leads to, how can I do that, Philip? How can I become innovative, high value today? In my view is, forget about customer service and focus on the customer experience. Because have a wonderful customer, or have a good customer service, you might go back, you might not go back. But if you have an amazing customer experience, well, then you're going to do 2 things. You're going to, 1, go back, and you're going to, 2, tell other people. So look at your business model, look at how you serve the market, look at how you engage with customers, and ask yourself the question, do I deliver a good customer service or an amazing customer experience? And how can you ensure that that customer experience floods throughout the whole organization? No matter if I ring Jimmy or I ring Sally in your company, the customer experience is always the same. And I want to come back and I want to tell other people. I will do that if I have an amazing customer experience. I probably won't if the customer service is okay. So customer experience is a way to distinguish yourself for nothing in the marketplace. And as you know, and as I know, many people there cannot deliver a great customer experience. It's a rare thing. And if you can deliver it, then you've given yourself the edge and the ability to charge a greater margin. That's cupcakes, by the way. When we do a big shred with a client, we deliver them cupcakes, cost 10 quid. But you can imagine when you go into an office and you deliver everybody these branded cupcakes, the excitement, the enthusiasm, and it's in the mind, in the memory. So when you go to book a shred in 6 months' time, you're going to price around the market, or do you want to go to that strange company who comes and delivers nice cupcakes? Be relentless in your pursuit of sales. Marketing and sales. What's the difference? Marketing is opening, sales is closing. And the more marketing you do, the easier sales become. The less marketing you do, the more difficult sales become. Think about it. If we went and produced a Coke today, a cola today, and called it ABC Cola, well, we're going to find it very hard to sell ABC Cola to the pubs and clubs. But if somebody gives you Coca-Cola, then you'll find it very easy to sell to the pubs and clubs because it's well known. It's a well-known global brand. So the more marketing you do, the easier sales become. So my recommendation to you is just being known by everybody in your market. And the three ways to do that is this: dominate your niche. Do one thing and do it really, really well, and be known for doing it well. Diversification, pivoting, innovation, forget it. Do one thing that you're known for and do it extremely well. I do shredding. That's all I do. I don't do scanning. I don't do storage. I don't do recycling. I haven't diversified into home insurance. I just forget all that, right? In times like this, dominate your niche and be known for doing one thing well. Be an educator through social media and through the normal media and through the press. Talk about your industry. Position yourself as a subject matter in the industry. We didn't have any money to spend on advertising in the early years, and all we did was talked about our industry, spoke to journalists about ID fraud, data protection, business security. We positioned ourselves as experts in the industry. You can too within the sector that you operate in. Position yourself as an expert in the industry. Don't talk about your company, talk about your industry, and you will get publicity, you will get press releases, you will get media coverage, all good. And also be highly visible. Again, it's kind of counterintuitive or counterculture, what we're like. We tend to be quite conservative here. We don't like to push our name out there. But see, right now, be visible. Just be everywhere. You know, give 100 quid to the local charity, get a photograph with the Down Chronicle or whatever it's called, or the Down Recorder. Go down to get involved in some big charitable initiative. Go to awards events, go for every award you can possibly go to so you're visible at those events. Go to networking events that are free. Just be around, be visible, make sure that your name is constantly out there in the social media, in the interwebs, in the networking events. And it's such a small neck of the woods here. It's quite easy to be visible and to be a big fish in a relatively small pond. We featured in the press 5-6 times a month on average, and we continue to do that today just by talking about our industry, just by talking about interesting things. We contribute to the Princess Trust. We're involved in raising money for Alzheimer's research. We've launched books. We're just doing different things to keep it fresh and to keep it interesting. I don't have a lot of time now, so I'm going to just really ramp it up in the last few minutes. Focus on great leadership. This is what's needed today. We need to really focus on being great leaders, whether you're a business of 1, business of 2, business of 7, doesn't matter. Be a great leader. I'm not a great leader, but I tell you this, when I have observed great leaders, these are the 3 things that I see in all of them. 1, they have a sense of a greater purpose. You know, go out today, go on, Joanne, I want to make the world a little bit better. And if you go out just to trade, you may do okay, but if you want to go out and make the world a little bit better, in the world in which we're in today, then, you know, if you're going to want to make your employees' experience better, customer experience better, if you want to make products and services that solve problems, if you want to give a little back to the community, do a little bit of mentoring, a little bit of volunteering, a little bit of contribution to a local charity, if you want to make the world a little bit better, then indeed you will be a great leader and create a great business. Be comfortable with your weaknesses. Very, very few people are comfortable with their weaknesses. And maybe the education system, I'm going to get on a little hobby horse here, maybe they don't allow you to be comfortable with your weaknesses, but you need to be comfortable with your weakness. You need to have that humility to surround yourself with people who are better than you. Because if you don't do that, then you're vulnerable, you're weak. But if you actually say, do you know what? I'll give me as an example. I'm rubbish at operations, but I've got a business partner who's brilliant at operations. He's amazing at it. So I am comfortable with my weakness of being weak in that area, but I've got a business partner who's strong in that area. I don't know about numbers, but I'm comfortable with that weakness. So I rely completely on my accountant and the people around me who are good at finance. And if you're comfortable with your weakness, you'll ask for help, you'll ask for advice, you'll surround yourself with really, really good people if you're comfortable with your weakness. And that will enable your business to grow. And this is the one that everybody struggles with. You need to want to be made totally redundant. What do I mean by that? You're about creating an environment that enables goals to be achieved. Your little business is an environment that enables goals to be achieved. You want to achieve those goals, but you want to make sure that those goals are being achieved with less and less of your input and less of your involvement. And by doing that, it doesn't mean you're not still going to be involved, but you're going to empower, you're going to inspire, you're going to train, you're going to develop people, you're going to delegate responsibility. You're going to surround yourself with a good accountancy practice or a good IT provider, or you're going to bring into your organization really, really good people so that essentially you can go off for 3 weeks on holiday to Magaluf and know that the company's going to survive and thrive in your absence. So finally, and this is finally, make meaning. Make the world a little bit better. And if you focus on making the world a little bit better, Shred Bank has been involved, as I mentioned, in Princess Trust. We've raised money for Alzheimer's research. Over the years, we've raised about 100,000 for both charities, and we've launched a number of books, Start to Grow being one of them. Just focusing on making the world a little bit better as much as we can. There's obviously companies out there who do a lot more to make the world better, but in our little space, we try to make the world a little bit better. And by doing that, we've created, I believe anyway, a great organization. And you too can continue to be a great organization or become a great organization by focusing on making meaning. So in summary, this is not the first calamitous time that we've come across. Guys, we've been through calamitous and chaotic times throughout the whole of history, and businesses have been able to start and grow during those times. Shred Bank is an example of that. My father's experience in Pizza Hut is an example of that. The Microsoft, LinkedIn, Hewlett Packard, Walt Disney, they're all companies that started during difficult times. Your responsibility now is to take a big step back and reflect on the fundamental truths. Is my business still relevant? I've still levers to pull. Get those meal shots with the Whisper chocolate bars out there. Things are moving fast. Things are moving really fast. And so there's opportunities that are presented there. And the business model just might need to change. And then ask yourself that relevancy test. Is my business still relevant? Do I solve a problem? Is there many people suffering that problem? Do they want a solution? And can I provide it at a price less than the cost of enduring the problem? And if you can do that, then you are relevant. And there's no reason why you cannot grow even in these challenging economic times. The 5 hours of recovery, recognize. So it's a real self-assessment. Where am I at? Where's my business at? Where's my market at? Where's my customers at? Just where's everything at right now? And have a real honest assessment of that. Risk minimize. Speak to your speak to your accountant. Make sure they're giving you quarterly management accounts. Make sure that you're, upping your prices if you can, reducing your costs. Make sure you're cash building. Maybe even make sure you ring your insurance broker and say, am I covered on employers and public liability, health insurance, life insurance, all that. Just risk minimize throughout the whole business. Remove. Quite brutal, but remove whatever it is, in your own mind, that needs to be removed. Whatever it is that's blocking you, whatever is holding you back, person, process, or product, take it out. And then restore. Some of the stuff will be knocked off doing things. I find that in church life. You go into a church now, and post-COVID, there's services that no longer happen. The evening service has been cancelled, or we no longer do that once a week. We do it once a month, and COVID's well gone, but people are knocked off their patterns and knocked off their practices. Get back to those old patterns and practices. Get back to those old marketing initiatives. Get back to going to networking events and marketing events, and get back to doing mail shots and telesales and knocking on doors and social media campaigns and Google ads. And maybe those things have been put on pause. Get back and restore those things, and indeed refocus on growing and building your business up. And very quickly, think different. Keep high and to the right, high value, high innovation. Make sure you don't have customer service. It's about the customer experience, so that people come back for more and that people talk about you. And indeed, marketing. If you want to sell, just market. Just do lots of marketing, and selling will become easy. And the way to do it is to dominate your niche, be an educator, and be very, very visible. And finally, make meaning. And if you make meaning and you make the world a little bit better, you will create an enthusiasm in your market. Like this is our first skills competition that we ran back in 2009. And if you notice the wee fella at the right-hand corner, he's probably the most enthusiastic person that Shred Bank has ever experienced. So thank you for your time. Thank you.